Slate one, go.
Hello?
Like
Welcome to How to Film the Present by PRAKSIS Youth Advisory Board. My name is Isa Ropesa, and I'll be the host for tonight. On stage tonight, we're going to be talking about storytelling in the context of filmmaking. On stage, we have Arnav Gorde, who's going to be interviewing our guest, artist and filmmaker, Vanja Sandell Billström. Thank you for joining us, Arnav and Vanja.
Hey, great to have you here, Vanja.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and I'm honored.
That's lovely. We have a lot of questions for you today, but first let's do a little introduction. I'm Arnav Gurde. I'm from the Public's Youth Advisory Board in Helsinki. Would you like to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, okay, thank you. So my name is Vanja Sandell Billström, and I've been a filmmaker and artist for a while now, making short films within the hour, sometimes scripted, sometimes documentary methods in art venues, film festivals.
At the Public's Youth Board, we've been doing a lot of filmmaking the past few months, specifically a lot of experimental filmmaking. And I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think experimental filmmaking is and how it differentiates from other cinematic expressions. And is it really important?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm also curious of what you lay in the word experimental filmmaking, because it's not a word that I think so much about when making my own films. But from what I understand, what do you put in the word experimental when you make films?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously experimental filmmaking, I'm sure it can have lots of different explanations. People have their own versions of how they approach it. But I think at Publix, a lot of us looked at it as just any non-conventional, non-commercial ways of approaching filmmaking. And it was initially a lot of stuff that we were just uncomfortable with or something that we weren't used to. And so I think non-conventional would be the easiest way I could briefly frame it. But yeah, I think it was really interesting for us to approach it that way. And we had a look at a couple of your films, and we found that it really matched with what we had in mind for this kind of filmmaking. And that's why I would love to hear from you and figure out what you thought about it.
Yeah, because it's interesting. We're also customized to how we tell stories. Yep. So whether you're educated in filmmaking or not, you're very trained in how to read the film, and you're very used to how it should look like. And as soon as you start to make things differently, I can understand your experiences.
Yeah.
But I wish I maybe could make things more easy for me when I was making films, but it's always starts with some kind of I'm a little bit awkward to something in filmmaking, or that I wish I was a different filmmaker. That maybe is the starting point, that I'm like not comfortable in the role of making films, and that's also became almost like my method.
I just wanted to go back to what you just said about you wanting to be another type of filmmaker. And I would love for you to elaborate on that. Are you talking about in terms of the commercializing of your films, in terms of more of something related to conventional film approaches?
I think in my mind, I want to be this brave film director making really dramatic, flamboyant films that make people scare and laugh, and at completely different films from what I make, because I end up in making this quite about this very small everyday topics, fragments, and the longer I work with my films, I realize that okay, I make the films that I'm able to make.
No, absolutely. And I can see the kind of attraction that these flamboyant, dramatic, over-the-top films have. And obviously it's very eye-catching. But I think your films are important in a very different way, in a much deeper sense. I think the fact that you're filming these everyday life things, and it connects to a larger context of us in today's world when we're starting to document our everyday lives, the small things. I want to get to your film, The Store Life.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that film up. I was spending 3 months in the city of Norrköping. So I was there asking people to give me their cell phone clips. And it is also 10 years ago, so it was a different time also. So, because there was this way of talking about filming the everyday life with their cell phone, that people wasn't present or they just filming themselves. It was kind of a little bit the critique of people filming their lives.
Hello. Oh, hello.
And I wanted to turn that and to see, but is it possible to actually get the feeling of that specific moment they were filming? Why did they put up the camera? Could I take care of that emotions or settings, or I don't know, that small fragments that actually made them to raise their hand with their cell phone and press rec. So that was 43 people sharing their cell phone material with me, and that's it's everything is included that I got, and it's so I didn't edit anything out. I wanted to take all the things with, so they're just sliding through the cinema screen from, and I was surprised that so many people at the exhibition where it was screened stayed for quite some time. Yeah. Because I thought people were thinking it was boring, or maybe no, I didn't think it at all. But I was so happy that people have they were also interested.
Yeah. And I think it talks to a larger context of the filmmaker's approach and how much control you have over the films, because obviously a lot of this footage is just what you receive is what you get. And you had to work with whatever they gave you, and you're editing, and that's the kind of control you have over the filmmaking process. If you had one piece of advice for all of us here today who are more consciously documenting their lives, what would you say to all of us?
Be curious. Be interested in the people you meet and the setting you're in, and be kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we're going to be moving on to the panel discussion with members of the Public Youth Board. I have a few questions for you guys, actually. What, in your opinion, is considered a film?
I'm super happy that is your first question, because for the past year, we've been working with Shubhangi Singh. She's an artist and filmmaker, and she's been helping us deconstruct our idea of what a film is. So we have this idea in our head that storytelling has to follow certain patterns, it has to follow a framework. And we've realized that it does not need to be scripted. As long as there's intent and purpose to the video you're creating, it can be a film.
So when I was researching about film, I find a very interesting point. The evolution of film technology is not only about camera, it's also about projector. So I was thinking that maybe film is not only about moving image, it's also about how we share the information. It's about in which platform we are showing these moving images.
That's interesting. Because, of course, it all boils down to the story, the narration behind it. And that could vary depending on how you're producing, for whom you're producing, even if you're producing it for anyone, and how you wish to distribute it. So yes, it's about intent, and it could be casual documentary, it could be something you found curious on your walk from home to school, and all that curated together with intent becomes a film.
When you mentioned platform, like what exactly are you talking about? Like social media?
I'm thinking about social media. Like there can be an Instagram account which can be considered as a documentary film.
Yeah, I actually have a question like related to that. Do you think that videos on like social media are considered films?
I mean, quite recently, Wizard Bizan, who has been recording and documenting what has been happening on Palestine, has won an Emmy Award as a filmmaker. So institutionally, we can say yes. But I think we can also look at social media in itself as a form of filmmaking and documentary. If you take, for example, Instagram Reels and TikToks that were made during the pandemic, they are such an indicative of the time and of the social imagery and feeling of the time that I think we can associate to political paintings done in the Paris Salon or asteroid movies that are a thing that we find indicative of a generation's mindset. So I think that if you look at social media as a case study, you can always legitimize it as a form of film.
When was the last time you spoke to a stranger? Just in Helsinki on the Oh, what was your favorite one?
The last one was yesterday, actually. Yesterday I was taking pictures on my film camera.
It's an archive. There's so much to it. There's documentation being done every single day. And even without curation, they're all individual small films. And now, since we have public filming that's become so prevalent, there's people out on the streets documenting their everyday lives, the people around them, the conditions they're living in, the situation they're in, and all of that is going to be of great value someday.
You brought up something about like filming in public. Like, what do you think about like people's privacy when being filmed in public?
That's an interesting place to go, because I've realized that because filming with your phone cameras is a relatively new thing, there aren't enough regulations and laws in place, one, to protect people's privacy, and on the other hand, even to allow artists to explore. We're so used to seeing big cameras as parts of films that we need to, again, deconstruct the notion that that is the only thing that can create film. So filming on camera, of course, comes with its own responsibilities and ethics. You cannot disrupt people's daily lives, hurt their emotions, their feelings. You can't. Maybe you can. Maybe that's what is giving us the opportunity to document more.
I was thinking about the question in a more practical sense. Do you think we should use the legislative power to ban this kind of action?
I think there should be regulation over this kind of action. So Hollywood has laws that protect child actors, and there is laws that protect people's public image. And I think those laws should also be applied for the use of a phone camera, much in the same way that we have for professional cameras.
How has your experience with the camera changed now knowing like the weight that it carries?
Well, speaking of the weight that it carries, I would just like to mention something we heard from Leo Custodio, who is very well versed in communicating for social change. And he spoke of your responsibility as a filmmaker. And now that we're documenting everyday life with our phones, we have a certain responsibility. The people we want to talk about, the people we want to talk to, we need to respect their rights. And we also, respect goes a long way. It's difficult to showcase their struggles, if that's what you want to talk about, because of how extractive this industry has been in the past. And yes, respect goes a long way, but I think this particular question, Elena is going to have something to say about.
So very coincidentally, my parents are influencers.
Oh.
I grew up in a family that does influencing as their main work from when I was like a teenager. And they were the non-exploitative type of influencer parents. They never forced me in front of a camera.
That's rare.
But they did surround me with cameras, and they did surround me especially with the social media as an industry. So I think I reached a point that I see everyday documenting as how it would react in certain platforms. Will it do well on YouTube? Will you do one on TikTok? Will it be censored? Those are all things that I'm constantly thinking because I was just exposed to it so much. And I think it's such an interesting thing to put against what we learned from Leo, that is treating video as something that is not necessarily commercial.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being on the panel and giving us your insights. And to our audience at home, this was an episode of the Future Futures talk show, a collaboration between PRAKSIS, Index, and Public's youth boards. Thank you for coming, and good night Helsinki, good night Oslo, and good night Stockholm.